weekly, so we can get in touch with our community, so we can help a lot of people and be part of this growing. I'm here today. I'm gonna have a special offer for you guys after the presentation. And now I'm gonna leave you guys with Deborah. She's a expat coach. I've worked with Deborah since 2019. We started working together, and I can assure you guys that her content is great. I've been to her workshop and I've worked with her for more than 6 months, and I think she has a great path to grow. And after more than 20 years in the corporate world with many different countries, she decided to develop helping fellow expats that have trouble with cultural transition, and she can make it smoother and happier. So with you guys, I present now Deborah Dahab.
Well, thank you so much, Gustavo, for your kind words and very generous introduction. So I am going to start right through it. And first of all, I would like to welcome you guys to being here. We're going to have a 30-40 minute, very packed webinar. You will have chances to ask questions in the end. So we do have a Q&A session at the end, a few minutes for that. So please save your questions to the end because many times your questions will be the same as a fellow friend and also someone who is here. If you have your microphone on, please turn it off so we can get the best of this experience. And I will be here. If you guys need to reach me, you can reach me through the chat box. So are you ready to start? I am psyched to do this. Welcome you guys. So before we actually dive into the meat of the matter, I would like to ask you to turn off distractions, have this 30-40 minute moment just for you. So if you can, turn off Facebook. Again, if you can, I'm listening to some people cough and sneeze. So if you can just turn off your microphone, that would be great. If you can't, I can do that for you. If you need to, one thing that would be interesting for you is to have pen and paper handy, because it might be interesting to take notes. This will be recorded. This is being recorded right now. It is live. So that's the beauty of the live, right? And you will get the recording afterwards. But if you want to have the best of the experience, you can take notes right now. So I am really excited to share this content with you. Before we start, I would like to know where you guys are right now. If you want to write on the chat box where you are. I am in Lisbon. Where are you guys right now? Lisbon. Gustavo says he's in Lisbon. Who else? Barcelona, New Mexico, Lisbon, Stockholm, Braga, up north in Portugal. Wow, that's great. So we have people from all over. Almada, Madeira. Let's see who else. We have a lot of people in Portugal, and some people from outside Portugal. So that is great. I'm really happy to see you guys here. And let's get started. Are you an expat or a foreigner? I'm going to pull out a poll. Oh, there's someone from London as well. That's great. I'm going to ask you guys to answer this question. If you're an expat or a foreigner, you're going to get prompt. And there are 4 options for you to answer. And I'm going to start it now. So let's see, there are 19 of you. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys 2 or 3 minutes to do this. Excellent. It's great to see these numbers changing. Let's see how you guys are. So we have still a few people to answer. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds more.
I just answered your question.
Excellent. Thank you. We're almost done. So we have almost everyone, 75% of you have voted. And so I'm going to share the results. And the majority of you guys have moved to a new country more than 6 months ago. So you, and the majority are expats. Some of you, about a third, are local and don't have plans to live abroad, and some of you, 20%, moved to a new country less than 6 months ago. So I have good news for everyone, because regardless of being an expat or not, this content is relevant for you. When you stick to the end of this presentation, we have special present for you guys. So wait until the Q&A and we have a nice big present for you guys. So I bet you're feeling anxious about the future, and if you're feeling it's hard to focus and you're having a hard time coping with what's going on, and I can say check, check, check to 3 of these issues, you guys are in the right place. You guys, because we're going to talk about issues and tools that will help you deal with focus, with anxiety, and help you cope. Does that make sense to you guys? Good idea? Yes? Great, excellent. So let's move forward, because today you're going to understand the phases of a transition, and what we are going through right now is a transition, is a change in how we do things. You're also going to learn how to focus your energy on what really matters. And finally, you're going to learn how to be more positive and productive, no matter what life throws your way, okay? These tools can be used in any transition, in any challenge you face in life. So let's go to what it's about. So some of you don't know me, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about myself, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of context of why what I bring to the table. So I'm an expat coach, as Gustavo said, and I've been an expat for pretty much all my life. This is a picture of me in the States, and this little person here is me when I was about 7 years old, maybe. And going through different transitions and different challenges in my life, cultural-wise, gave me the knowledge of knowing, of having the experience of some very successful cultural transitions and many other very unsuccessful cultural transitions. So after 20 years of corporate life and living in over 5 countries, I made it my business, literally, to understand why certain transitions are successful and why some are unsuccessful. And I work primarily with expats who go through cultural transitions, but ultimately we go through life transitions, right? So that's why I think that this content is really relevant for the times that we're living right now, and for other challenges that we will face in our life, for that matter. So let's start with the 3 hidden keys, shall we? Let's go to the first hidden key. The first hidden key is about naming stuff. So I don't know if you're familiar with Harry Potter, but in the first Harry Potter, Harry is the only one that has the courage to name Voldemort. So all the other people are scared to death of Voldemort, but he is the one who has the courage to name him. So we can only tackle things in our lives that we can name, that we can identify. So the first thing is to identify what we're going through. Does that make sense to you guys? And I'm going to ask you a question before we move on. Have you ever heard of the term cultural shock? And I'm going to do another, poll, and this poll is to see if you've ever heard of the term cultural shock. So let's see, 14% of you have voted. Okay, the majority so far. Let's see, half of you have voted. I'm curious to see the results. Great. So 70%, 75% of you guys have voted. I will end the poll and share the results. So 60% of you guys know exactly what cultural shock is. 20% yes, but is not really sure. And a minority has never heard of this term and is not sure. So
13%, it's me.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to share with you guys what cultural shock is. Cultural shock is the feeling, and this is by Oxford Dictionaries, okay? It's not me. Oxford Dictionary says that it's the feeling of disorientation experienced by someone who is suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar culture, way of life, or set of attitudes. I think it's fair to say that we are living cultural shock because we have suddenly been jolted into a way of life that is completely foreign to us. And we have been obliged, we have been forced into having a set of attitudes and a way of life that is completely unfamiliar. So I think we're going through cultural shock. And being an expat and cultural transition coach, well, if there's one thing I know about, it's cultural shock. So I can help with that. If we understand the process of adjustment, we can try to make parallels and understand how human beings usually react when there's a cultural transition. Does this make sense to you guys? Yes? Excellent. So what are the symptoms of cultural shock? So this is what the symptoms that people usually go through when they transition cultures. And they vary from feeling of helplessness. I have been feeling helpless every day. Feeling homesick. I really miss the way things were. I miss going to a cafe. I miss, kissing people and hugging people. I have fits of anger over delays and minor frustrations. Just the other day, I dropped a jar of pickles on the floor and started crying because everything is so raw, right? Everything is so in your face, and just little things can trigger very strong emotions. Am I right or am I right? Delay or refusal to learn the language. So this, of course, is applied to a cultural transition. But let's think about this. What is the language that we're going to have to use right now? For example, it's the language of distance. It's the language of wearing masks. And how many of us have been resisting connecting to people, because we only have the online means of connection right now. And I've seen many people, for example, saying, I don't want to wear a mask, or resisting to wear masks. And that's really human, to be honest. That's normal. And finally, one symptom of cultural shock, which is really relevant, is the fear of being cheated or robbed. And when we're talking about cultural transition, we're talking about, for example, the person not being able to speak the language. So, for example, when they get to sign a lease, they feel the fear that they're being cheated, that they're not being treated correctly because they don't know the language and the laws. And how can we translate this symptom to what we're living right now? Well, I'll give you an example of my own life. Just the other day, I had to buy a piece of furniture online, something that I had never done before. I mean, I'm used to buying books online and even smaller-ish things, but you know, a piece of furniture that was a high-ticket item, and I felt the fear of being cheated. So I started asking people, do you know about this store? I have never bought in this store. I had that fear because I'm learning a new language, a new way of doing things that I'm not used to. I had never bought furniture online. Does that make sense to you guys, what I'm talking about? So we can kind of make a parallel between cultural shock symptoms and what we're living. So let's look at what happens in the process of cultural transition. So what happens here, this is one of the many theories behind cultural transition. This is the one I like the most because I think with my clients and with people who have participated in my events, it really resonates, and it resonates with my life as well. So this is what I usually use, and it goes like this. So we have happy feelings and unhappy feelings. And the first part of a cultural transition is the honeymoon. When we're talking about cultural transition, it's about that feeling of being a tourist and, you know, everything is novelty. But of course, we don't have a honeymoon per se in our specific transition during this pandemic. But what do we have? We have a sense of novelty. Tell me, show me your hands. If you kind of, at the first moment of being in lockdown, you had the thought that you were going to catch up on reading, that you were going to clean that, declutter that closet that you've been meaning to do for so long, that you were going to organize the books, that you were going to do so many things and take advantage of this moment. I know I did. I still have a list of all the closets that I want to declutter. And I haven't done even half. So there was a sense of novelty. There was a sense of, okay, let's take advantage of this moment. We're going to cook more, bake more, right? So, but it wears off. And when this novelty wears off, we go through cultural shock and we suffer the symptoms that we've seen previously. And what happens is that as time goes by, we find an adjustment. We find a way to deal with things. We come to terms with certain limitations and certain hurdles. And then we have a stable stage. We have a stage in cultural transition. I call this the new normal, the new way of doing things. So in a cultural environment, if you're used to having dinner in your home country at 7 p.m. and in the new country, dinner is at 10 p.m., well, you're get used to having dinner at 10 p.m. and that's that, okay? It's your new normal. And afterwards, if you go back to your home country, when we're talking about cultural transition, you have reverse cultural shock, which is what was normal in your home country becomes foreign. And I think we're going to go through that when we go back to our new normalcy. We might even miss, well, I know I'm going to miss my afternoon walks after lunch because, you know, I can do that right now. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that when we go back to whatever normal new life we're going to have. Does that make sense to you guys? So we can learn from this. And of course, after that, we have a resocialization period, which is readjusting to whatever is new and whatever is current in our lives and whatever we have to adjust with. Of course, we can resist more or less. And the more we resist, the harder it's going to be. So this first hidden key is about naming things. And now you know that what happens, it's easier to deal with it. It's easier to tackle the challenges because you know what you're dealing with. So let's go to the second hidden key. The second hidden key is about what you can control. So this is a concept by Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think this is super relevant for us today. So what he says is we have things that we control, right? For example, I control my clothes, what I'm wearing today. I can control that. I can control what I eat. I can control my emotions. I can control my thoughts. But there are things that I can only influence. So for example, the temperature in my house, I can influence if I have a heater or an air conditioner. I can control my clothes. I can influence the temperature in my house. And I can't control or I can't influence the weather, right? So I can't control or I can't influence the stock market. I can't control or I can't influence exchange rates. So why is it important for us to know this? Because it's important for us to focus our energy and our time and our attention on what? On things we can control. Because whatever is outside of our control, well, it's outside of our control. And once we get to acknowledge that and to make peace with that, we don't suffer as much anymore because we deal with what we can. And what we can, because it's not in our control, we surrender. It's not easy, I can tell you that. But if we have this concept, it's easier to organize your thoughts. And when you start getting anxious, think about, is it something I can control? Well, you know what you can control, guys? Your breath. And your breath is the first thing that's going to get you out of any anxious state. So think about it. Think about things that you can control and think about things that you can't control and have the things that you do control and that you have a say in your life a priority. And the other things, well, there are other things. That makes sense to you guys. Yes? Excellent. I hope this is helpful for you to organize and manage your daily life, in fact. So this is a prayer or it's called the Serenity Prayer that I think really sums up this whole control thing, which is to ask for the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And if we know this and we incorporate this, I can guarantee, guys, our life is a lot easier, no matter what life throws at us. Pandemic or not pandemic, whatever life throws at us, if we have this clear in our mind, it's easier to manage things. So let's go to the key number 3. I'm going pretty fast, so I can give you guys time to ask questions, okay? Key number 3. And this key is something that we're going to have a practical exercise. So if you have pen and paper, get ready to use it because we're going to have a short exercise here. So write in the chat box, what do you think is the difference between a change and a transition? So let's see. What's the difference between a change and a transition? Any ideas? A change is a moment. A transition is the process after change. The transition is a process of adapting to a change. Yeah, you're pretty much on the right track. The change is the moment, really. And the transition is what happens afterwards, is how you incorporate that change into your life. And change can be voluntary, like you decide to change jobs, you decide to get married, you decide to have a divorce, you decide to have a child, or it can be involuntary, like you're in lockdown and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So, but regardless of being voluntary or involuntary, the process of transition and how you navigate that will be fundamental in your quality of life through that transition. The more you resist it, the harder it's going to be. Does that make sense? So one thing that I would like to share is a concept shown to me by William Bridges, which is the author of Managing Transitions. It's a great book, and I highly recommend you guys to read it. And what he says is that counterintuitively, a transition starts with an end. So we end something. We leave, before starting a new job, there was an ending. Before getting married, you end the single life. Before having a child, you end your childless life. And it's important for us to acknowledge the endings and to have closure with them, because, or else you might be caught in the temptation of being nostalgic, of looking to the past all the time. And what he says also is that after the end, there's a neutral zone. There's this moment where it kind of seems like nothing is happening. And with my cultural transition clients, what happens is kind of like, imagine that you move to a new country. So you're not living in country A, but you still haven't settled down in country B. You don't have a social network, you don't know how things work, you don't know the language very well. So you're kind of like in that limbo, in that in between. And that's the neutral zone. And what happens is that after the neutral zone, you have a start, and then of course another ending, and that cycle goes on. But what happens usually is that we're either eager to start something new or nostalgic of the past. And the neutral zone is, I think, what we're living right now in many aspects. Something has ended, our life the way we knew it has ended. And what's going to start is something that we don't know. So we're kind of in that limbo. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you feel that way too? I know I feel that way. And so the neutral zone can be very uncomfortable, and that's why people sometimes avoid it. But it's a very useful phase, and I'll tell you why. Because during this neutral phase, you can take control of how you want to live the next part of your life. So what can you do during this neutral phase? And this is what I'm going to propose an exercise in a minute. So you can identify what depletes your energy. What are the things, people, habits, food, objects, anything that you had in your previous phase and took energy out of you? And also recognize what gives you energy. And that can be anything. That can be people, that can be habits, food, thoughts, objects, anything that gives you energy and joy. So during this neutral phase, you have the opportunity to create a new reality based on your choices and not only what life throws at you. Does that make sense? So I'm going to propose an exercise right now. And the first step is to think of 3 things that deplete your energy. The second step is to think of 3 things that bring you energy and joy. So if you want to do that on a piece of paper, I'm going to give you guys like 2 or 3 minutes. It shouldn't be too hard to think of these things. And once you're done, so list of 3 things that deplete your energy, 3 things that bring you joy. And now choose 1 thing to eliminate and one thing to incorporate or keep. And make these things a priority. So moving forward, next phase, whatever that will be in your life, one thing that you want to eliminate and one thing that you want to incorporate or keep if it's something that you already do. And very important, decide now how you're going to celebrate your accomplishments. So I've had clients, for example, have one thing that they want to eliminate is, for example, having conversations with people that were negative. And how do you get out of that? Well, you can, for example, very politely say that you can't talk to them, or some clients even eliminated the person from their lives when that's possible, of course. Sometimes that's not possible. And it's important to celebrate your accomplishments. What are you going to do when you were able to resist the temptation of eating that horrible hamburger that brings you nothing but calories? How are you going to celebrate that you have meditated every single day of this week? That's really important to celebrate your accomplishments. And it's as important as making this list. So I hope this exercise is helpful for you guys. And I'm going to give you a bonus key right now before we go to our Q&A. The bonus key is something that in all my programs, I highly recommend people to do, which is, let's see if, start a gratitude journal. So gratitude is an emotion that shifts your energy. And when you do it consistently, you really start looking into what you have instead of looking at what you lack. And how do you do that? Well, my suggestion is that every night before you go to sleep, write down 3 things you're grateful for in that day. Why before you go to sleep? Because it's a good emotion to have for a good night's sleep, gratitude. And try to be as specific as possible. So I'm grateful for having been able to do the webinar and reach as many people as possible. And given the circumstances, if there are days that you're grateful for just a roof over your head, having running water or food in the fridge, that's okay too, because sometimes days are tough. And that's pretty much what you can be grateful for. But that's okay. That's okay. And you can use a notebook. You can use an app, or you phone. You can use a gratitude jar. But remember that do what feels right for you, and that what you can do consistently. Consistency is the key here, because you want to be doing this many times over. And an excellent exercise is to look back at what you were grateful for a month ago. Look back at what you were grateful for a year ago. That's an excellent exercise. And I'm sure you will remember things that you had forgotten. And it will bring you joy. It's something that will bring you joy. So this is a bonus key that I am offering you guys today. So now is the Q&A time, and I'm open to your questions. You can send them in the chat box. There's one here. Thoughts and projects. Oh, that was from the other one. So let's look at your questions. Let's see who has questions. I hope I was very mindful. I have been very mindful of your guys' time. So we've been doing this for exactly 36 minutes. So I'm proud of myself for that. Can you remind me what key 2 was? Yes, I can. Let's go back to that. So key 2 was regarding the circle of control of influence, okay? So it was those, let me go back here. So this is the key number 2. So focusing on what you can control and surrendering to what you can't control. Okay? Any other questions?
If anyone wants to ask with the video or the audio, it's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just open up here. No questions? So I'll ask you guys a question. What is the first step you're going to make to, oh, there's a question. Let me see here. Do you think remote work is going to be less option to do you think remote work is going to be an option to overcome these hard times? Well, I think remote work is a reality right now. And it can overcome these hard times because it keeps you connected with people. And we do have to be mindful of not overdoing it. Just today, I was reading an article of how people are going through burnout because they're working a lot more than they're used to. And there's this idea, you know, because you don't have the commute and because you don't have, you know, the downtime, the water cooler time, and the socializing time, you're available 24/7, which actually is not true, right? We still have to sleep, and you know, remote work, I think, is a necessity. It's something that we cannot run away from, but it's really important to be mindful and respectful of your time and other people's time. So, you know, remember that certain boundaries, like weekends, and, you know, calling someone or sending email 10 p.m. for a response the next day, the next morning might be not, would you do that normally in an office situation? Probably not. So I think we have to be very careful at how we deal with remote work. I hope I answered your question, Maria Bernardino. Okay, thank you. She said yes. Thanks. Okay, any more questions?
Deborah, as you said about the remote work, I can give a personal opinion about that. Once we are inserted in the market and we had to close our co-work during this quarantine. So I think remote work is what kept us going. We've developed a lot of projects. This one here is a project that we are developing through this last month. And I think remote work is the reality, and every company should be adapting to that, or maybe even thinking about going to another type of working situation. And appears a lot of different options right now, like remote work, especially this type of meetings, calling to a client with more pressure to sell or something like that, or even co-working. Co-working is an option and it's a reality. Once a lot of companies need spaces and only for a meeting or something more formal, so they can keep home working. And then when they need some space or auditorium or something like that, he can go to a co-working space and don't need to pay all this month bills and water, energy, security, and everything else, since you can only pay a fee and go there to have a meeting or something like that. So I think it's time to reinvent our companies and to think of new strategies for this 2020. Because I think it's not going to be easy to the end of the year to anyone, but we need to fight when we need to be ahead of the competition.
Yeah, I agree. Let me see, there's one difficulty of smart work is focused Would you have any key to manage it better? Well, one thing you can do to help focus is, one thing I like to do is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Pomodoro technique, which is 25 minutes of work, intense work, non-interrupted, non-distraction with Facebook and social media work, and then 5 minutes of rest. You get up and you walk around, you get a drink of water or whatever. For certain types of work, that works. For example, if you have to produce writing, or if you have to be concentrated on reading something, I think that technique works very well. It depends on your line of work. Another thing that can help some people is music, but I'm not talking about listening to hard rock or or anything like that. It would be more like classical music, or even certain frequencies that you can find on YouTube, that are frequencies that are especially designed for focusing. And for some people that really helps. And the last tip I would give for focus is rituals. So it's really important for us to have routines and rituals. It grounds us. And to focus is like, for example, if I have to do something that needs my concentration, and I'm better in the morning, then choose in the morning. Or I work better at night, then do that at night. But do something consistently. So so it's not scattered around. I hope that made sense. Was that a good answer to your question, Claudia? Let me see if she responds here. Yeah, it does. Thanks. Good. I hope it's helpful. I can write here the name of Pomodoro technique. It's Pomodoro. You can find free apps that have that, or you can just basically on your phone have a 25-minute timer, and then for 5-7 minutes rest, and then go back to 25 minutes. So any more questions, guys? Any tips on how to change the established patterns of depleting habits? How to focus our attention on things that bring joy? Well, I would say first, in order to focus your attention on things that bring joy, is to identify what brings joy. That's why I actually proposed that exercise of making the list. And once you identify that, my suggestion would be to start small. One thing that usually makes us falter in our changing of ways is that we want too much too fast. And changing habits is a process. And we change for two reasons: to avoid pain and to get closer to pleasure. So I would suggest choosing, that's why I suggested choosing only one thing to change, one thing to incorporate, and one thing to eliminate. Because when we try to do too many things, we can get overwhelmed. So my suggestion is to focus our intention on things that bring us joy. Choose one. To eliminate, choose one. And once you've changed that pattern, go to the other. Does that make sense? Focus and make a list, and start small to begin with. Exactly. You start small, for example, with things that you think are easier is a great idea. And also start with one. Many clients of mine have like a list, and there's like, oh, I want to do everything at the same time. It's like, whoa, 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 let's breathe first. And because you know what, when you start doing things and you see the positive effect, you get motivated to change other things. So it ends up being a virtuous cycle. I hope that made sense to you. So do we have more questions? What are your questions? How to integrate the good practice of these times in the future when a lot of people, I kind of don't understand how to integrate the good practices of these times in the future when a lot of people have not changed. Maybe that's it. Well, I think it goes back to the circles of control. You can't change other people. You can't control other people. You can only make changes in your life. So incorporate the changes in your life. And, you know, it might influence other people's behavior because we can, if we talk to someone with a smile, it's more likely that people will respond with a smile, right? Than if we talk to someone and we're frowning. But you can't change someone. You can't control someone. So you can just do it on yourself. You can just make the changes on yourself. You know, and try to help them, but you can't change them. And integrate it in your own life. Well, it's up to you. You don't depend on other people usually to integrate your changes. I hope I answered the question. Licinia. Yeah, Licinia. Yes? So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. We're 45 minutes. If people have more questions, I would love to answer them.
I'm sorry, Deborah, but I have to leave now. I have a meeting.
Go ahead.
At
Go
7
ahead.
o'clock. Okay.
It was great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Francois.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I think it was great. I love the curve. I think I identify myself in so many situations during your talk. And I would like to thank you today and this afternoon for your time. And thank everyone that is here with us. I think we have an extra present, as you said in the beginning.
Yes, we do. So you guys stayed with us until the Q&A. And if this resonated with you, I would be happy to share. Let me see, there's another thing in the chat box. Let me just check that out before we move on. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So what we have is, if you're interested in getting more information about this content and about and other events and content that I can offer, I'm going to put on the chat box a link where you can manifest, you can fill out the form and tell us what more you want. And also, Must Be is offering a special 39, can you see the slides? Yes? No.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, Deb, but I have to leave now. Okay.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was very interesting.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So Must Be is offering a special price for their virtual office services here in Lisbon, and 1 week free at the co-working space, of course, after the lockdown is done. I don't know if Gustavo wants to talk a little bit about this.
No, I think you summed it. The virtual offices, they were having a special price during this situation right now with 39 euros. If you guys want more information, I'm open here to answer any question, or you guys can contact us in your email. I'm gonna put here in the chat. And after the lockdown, I offer you guys a free week for a co-working space. You guys want to try it or have meeting rooms there, you can try it as well. So I invite everyone that is here for 1 week free at our co-work.
And also for you guys that are here, and if you're interested in participating in any of my online workshops or my group coaching program, just click on the link that I sent you guys in the chat box, and you will get 30 minutes coaching services with me one-to-one as a bonus, only for you guys who are here at the webinar. So on the link is the first, it's a Google form, so you guys can fill it out with your interest in participating in other events. And Gustavo posted the contact information for Must Be. And thank you guys. It was really great to be with you. And I'm always available on my Facebook group and my Facebook page. And you guys have my email here. So I'd be happy to contact you further and see you in the future.
Just one more thing. We are going to do every Tuesday, we're going to have a different webinar. You guys can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We're going to have 3 webinars throughout the month of May. So I invite you guys for the next one. The next one is 9 tips to have a powerful PowerPoint presentation for you guys at work, for our distancing right now. Everyone needs to have a nice presentation, so we intend to help you guys as well. And follow us on social media and we can keep in touch.
Thank you guys for being here, and let's share the love. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.